Dollars and Cents is made on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australia Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leap, the senior content producer here at the Australia Institute, and filling in for Greg this week is our senior economist, Matt Grudnoff. Hello, Matt.
G'day.
How are we doing this week?
I'm good. It's good to be back. It's when Greg's away.
When Greg's away, Matt comes to play, or in this case, to talk about house prices, which I know is a special topic for you. You write a lot about it.
I seemingly write everything about housing.
Yes. Well, I'm glad to have a topic this week that is of particular interest to you because we've got new house price data out this week from Cotality, formerly known as CoreLogic. They should have kept that name, but whatever. As one might expect following the changes to the CGT discount and negative gearing, any sign of house prices falling, the media got in a bit of a frenzy.
Australia is in the grip of a property price plunge.
As new data has confirmed homeowners' worst fears, housing prices across major cities took a tumble in June.
Australia's housing market downturn has worsened, with home values recording their biggest monthly fall in 3.5 years.
Will the Prime Minister guarantee house prices won't fall any further?
And while it may be good news for first home buyers, where does it leave people already in the market?
There are a lot of strongly worded headlines about, house prices plummeting. There was a plunge, things like that, which, felt a bit more dramatic than the headlines when they were, increasing. But anyway, Matt, how much did house prices fall to give us such strong headlines?
Plummeting, yes. Well, it was 0.4%.
Oh my gosh.
0.4%.
That is a plummet.
For the month. A massive fall. Not really, obviously. It's basically house prices being flat. But I think what is most interesting about all of the headlines is it really puts into perspective what some people think about housing affordability. Apparently, housing affordability needs to occur, but at the same time, prices need to continue to rapidly rise.
Yeah, it's this sort of nebulous thing.
Like, well, I want groceries to be more affordable, but I also want their prices to rapidly increase. I want petrol to be more affordable, but I want it to rapidly increase in price. You'd think I was nuts if I said that, but apparently it's okay to think that house prices should continue to increase rapidly, but we should have housing affordability as well.
And this, plummet of 0.4%, is that, I suppose a big drop compared to previous, drops, I suppose?
No, I mean, it might signal, look, certainly house prices have slowed right down. And to be clear, that's the average across Australia. There's been bigger falls in Melbourne and Sydney, but again, still around 1%.
Yeah.
And there are other places in Australia that have gone up, but also by smaller amounts. And, house prices slowing down or being flat is what we need if we want to see housing become more affordable, at the very least, right?
Yeah.
We need house prices to stop increasing. And so, if you think that housing is about a safe and secure place to live, this is good news. If you think housing as an investment, a way to build financial security and become rich, then this is bad. And really, when we look at the population generally, we saw a great survey a week or so ago, which basically said that the majority of Australians, 54%, wanted to see house prices go down, not stay the same. They wanted to see them go down. Only about 10 or 15% of people thought that they shouldn't go down. The rest were unsure. And yet that's what the general public think. But if you look in the media, you think the exact reverse.
Yeah, maybe for a bit of context, when was the last time that house prices were this low, I guess?
Look, if we think about this and we look at all the predictions, there's lots of predictions about what house prices are going to do. And look, I've talked many times before about how predicting the future is really hard and we're really bad at it and we always get it wrong.
Economists particularly.
Economists, but most people. Now, there's predictions between, over the next year, house prices are going to perhaps increase a little bit to them falling by 10%.
Yeah.
So let's assume the worst case, that they fall by 10%. In Sydney, a fall of 10% would mean that we would go back to September 2024, so 18 months ago. House prices have been increasing so fast that even a 10% fall right now would just mean going back 18 months in house price growth.
Yeah. So, all this panic, all this worst case scenario, it's, house prices could be what they were 18 months ago.
When they were unaffordable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's been interesting, I suppose, seeing the media reaction, but then also the government's reaction because, obviously they, made these changes to the CGT discount and negative gearing with the hope of, as you say, making house prices more affordable. But they haven't really seemingly been able to claim that they are responsible for this drop in house prices, even though that is kind of the point. Because I suppose, if they did say, yes, this was us, we did that, thank you, then you'll have the media saying,
my house fell in value by $20,000 and the government's happy about that.
Albanese is the reason that you're less wealthy and he loves it. Yep.
Yeah, look, traditionally in Australia, politicians thought that house prices increasing was a good thing and they could never criticise it, and house prices going down was a bad thing. Now, I think that things are actually changing. As I said, that polling is definitely showing that there is a big change, that people know that the housing market is so messed up that house prices probably need to fall.
Yeah.
And so I think that the politics in that has changed. But, the Albanese government, not known for being courageous particularly, but, on housing in these changes, good on them. They have actually done a good job.
You got to give them credit for this.
I'll give them credit for that. But they're playing it cautious.
Yeah.
And they are certainly not claiming this as a win. They're saying, it could be interest rates. It could be the tax changes.
The housing minister, Claire O'Neill, had this debate sort of thing with Michaelia Cash on 7 this week. And, when she was asked to defend the drop in house prices, she was like, it was a bit nebulous. She sort of said she wasn't really claiming it. She was saying it could be due to interest rates. Could she be? Is it potentially?
The biggest driver of house prices has been interest rates in the past. But the drop in auction clearance rates and the flatlining of house prices coincided with the weekend after the budget.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that interest rates haven't played a part in this. 3 interest rate rises, this increase absolutely probably has had some impact. Absolutely probably. But the big impact, I think, is absolutely the budget.
Yeah.
And that's because investors have left the market. So there is less demand for housing. Like I've been telling you and we've been talking about for so long, what's driving these house price increases are investors rushing into the market, attracted by this capital gains tax discount, using negative gearing, and that has pushed up house prices. These investors are going, well, if these huge tax incentives aren't there, I'm not going to buy or I'm not going to invest in housing anymore. Well, guess what? That means when first home buyers show up to the market, there aren't all these investors competing with them and they actually start winning auctions.
Yeah, yeah.
We believe that by rebalancing the migration program and taking decisive action on the housing crisis, the Coalition can free up almost 40,000 additional homes in the first year.
A coalition will cap immigration numbers based on the number of homes constructed each year. Never again will a government be able to bring in more people than our housing can support.
You've also got to slow down migration, for goodness sakes. You can't bring in 1.4 million people and not actually build homes. You've got to take responsibility for your failures.
It was interesting in the debate with Michaelia Cash that Claire O'Neill had. Michaelia Cash brought up, of all things, immigration, which I know, you've written a lot about. She said first home lending since budget night has decreased apparently by about 26. You've also got to slow down migration, for goodness sake. You can't bring in 1.4 million people and not actually build homes. You've got to take responsibility for your failures. Matt, as this is a topic you've written quite a lot about, is Michaelia Cash correct here?
No, it has nothing to do with immigration. Look, over the last 10 years, as I've said many, many times, the population has increased by 16%. Now, that's not a small increase in population. That's a reasonable size increase in population. But the number of homes has increased by 19%. That's more than 16%.
Yeah.
There are more homes. Homes are increasing faster than the population. If you go back a much longer period, right, and you look at, say, census data that goes all the way back, and we can go back to 2001, which was when house prices first exploded. At the 2001 census to the 2021 census, that's 20 years. That's the most recent census. We actually have another census what is it, next month now? We're in July.
Oh
Next
my
month
gosh.
is super exciting,
So exciting.
for stats nerds like me. For the rest of you, it's just another form you've got to fill out.
Yep.
But, we will get more census data soon. But over that 20 years, population increased by a third, 34% it went up. But again, the number of dwellings, the number of homes increased by 39%.
Yep.
Again, homes are growing faster than the population. This hasn't been about too many people coming into Australia. Australians are very good at building new houses. We continue to build new houses, and the amount of new houses we have grows faster than the population. This is a problem of demand. This is a problem of investor demand.
Yep.
And if you take that investor demand out, then as we've seen, house prices are flatlined.
Yeah. It is also, I suppose, worth pointing out that over the past few decades that you're talking about, the Liberal governments have been in charge for a bit of that, some of which Michaelia Cash was there for. So
yeah, the population growth that we have now has gone back to the pre-pandemic level, right? So the pandemic disrupted population in a huge way, but now we're back for 2025, for the whole of 2025, the population grew at 1.5%. For the pre-pandemic average, it was 1.5%. So the population's back to where it was before the pandemic. But if you thought that 1.5% was too much, then 1.5% is probably too much now. But let's be clear, the coalition was in charge for a lot of that period, and they thought 1.5% was okay. So it's a bit rich for them to be going, oh, this is terrible now.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the one thing you could give her when she says you need to build more homes, building more public housing.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Look, building more homes will make housing more affordable. So while this crisis wasn't caused by a lack of supply, more supply is absolutely going to make housing more affordable. But when we say housing more affordable, we mean house prices being lower. So if Michaelia Cash says we should build more housing to make it more affordable, what she's saying is that flatlining of house prices right now isn't a big enough fall. But you watch, if there is a drop, right, she'll be going, look, house prices are dropping. We need to build more houses so that house prices can drop more. I don't know. Like, it's just
do we
craziness.
think that she's going to be calling for house prices to drop more?
She's not, but she's going to call for more supply and more affordable housing, but she just won't link the two, even though the two are one and the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And then another bit of criticism of the recent tax changes that we haven't really talked about much on the podcast yet that's been getting some airtime recently is in relation to negative equity.
Sounds scary.
It does sound scary. The Cotality Research Director, Tim Lawless, said there was a risk that first home buyers who had accessed the government's 5% deposit scheme would end up in negative equity if prices fell further. Matt, can you explain what negative equity is and if it is actually something we should be worried about?
Yeah, so negative equity is when the value of the property is less than the value of the mortgage. So let's say you bought a house for $1 million and you borrowed $1 million. So let's say you borrowed all of the amount for the house. And then the house drops to $950,000. So it drops in value by $50,000. And your mortgage is still roughly $1 million because you've just started paying it off. Then effectively the mortgage on the house is bigger than the value of the house. And that is negative equity. That's what negative equity is. Let me tell you what it isn't. It doesn't mean that the bank immediately rocks up and says, sorry, we're evicting you. We have to kick you out. The bank doesn't care about your negative equity if two things are occurring. One, and most importantly, you're paying your mortgage.
Yeah.
If you continue to pay your mortgage, and just because you have negative equity doesn't mean that you're not going to be paying your mortgage. Your income hasn't changed. Your situation hasn't necessarily changed. So you're still paying your mortgage every fortnight or every month or how often you pay it. If you continue to do that, the bank doesn't care. They're getting their money back. And you don't necessarily care because you're still living in the house and nothing has changed. And also, the bank is going to be concerned because they can't recover their costs. Now, if you take out if you have less than a 20% deposit, the bank makes you take out a special kind of insurance that you have to pay for that the bank can claim on if you can't repay the mortgage. And what that insurance covers is any loss the bank makes. When they sell your house, if they're short in any way, they can't pay all the mortgage off from the sale of the house, the insurance company will pay that. Now, this is important because this is what the 5% deposit scheme that the government has introduced. The 5% deposit scheme is the government saying we will pay for that insurance. We will cover that insurance for the individual, or we will take the risk effectively. So the bank is covered, right? The bank is not going to lose. So they don't care. So long as you keep paying your mortgage, the bank doesn't care about negative equity.
Yeah. So in that case, what's sort of the worst case scenario? Say someone had just taken out the 5% deposit scheme and right before these changes were introduced, are they, are they worse off because of this?
Well, if you look at how far house prices have fallen, you'll notice that they haven't actually fallen more than 5%. So if you have a 5% deposit, then you're still in positive equity probably, unless your particular house has fallen a lot for some other reason, in which case that's probably not because of the changes or the increase in interest rates. There's probably something else going on. But you're not. But let's say that house prices continue to drop a bit and they drop, 10%. Well, yes, if you just bought if you were the most unlucky first home buyer out there, right, and you just happened to buy at exactly the wrong time, you bought at the beginning of May or in April, right, you might actually be in negative equity. Let's also say you are the most unlucky borrower out there and your situation radically changes. You lose your job. You can no longer pay the mortgage, right? Well, what would happen is you would sell the house. There'd be perhaps a small shortfall. And in that particular case, the government would make up the difference because that's what the 5% guarantee is. You'd be sad, don't get me wrong, and you'd walk away. But if you just got in the market, and you'd lose your deposit effectively. Yeah. But, that is a very specific circumstance for a very small group of people that may or may not happen. Yeah. And the idea that we shouldn't be excited about housing becoming more affordable because there's this tiny group. And why do I know it's a tiny group? Well, because house prices have increased so rapidly. The only group of people it could possibly affect are those that have only just got into the market, right? If you go back a year, house prices have zoomed up. Yeah. Right. And so even, as I said earlier, even if, prices fall 10%, that's really only taking us back to the end of 2024 levels. So a 10% drop means that those who bought in 2024 still are not behind. Yeah. House prices have effectively been flat for them. So we're talking about a small minority. Negative equity makes people think that my house is going to be seized. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that your house is no longer worth as much as the mortgage you have on it. If you want to keep paying your mortgage, which most people do, and you want to keep living in the house, not going to affect you at all. Yeah. So maybe you could argue somewhat poor timing on the government's part in doing the 5% guarantee right before making these changes, but doesn't mean that they shouldn't have made the changes. Yeah, look, I mean, the 5% deposit scheme is a bad scheme because it probably pushed up house prices, right? Yeah. Like so many other housing affordability, in air quotes, schemes from the government, it actually made housing less affordable. It just made it easier for a particular group to get in for a short period of time. That's why it was bad. It's not really going to affect things either way, I think. I think what this is probably going to do is mean that house prices remain flat for a long period of time. And look, if house prices remain flat for 15 years, that's a great outcome. Average incomes are probably going to increase by 60% over those 15 years. So think about it. You're buying houses at the same price you are now, but you have 60% more income on average. Oh, that means that housing's more affordable, right? Yeah. So it's the slow way, but it's also the least disruptive way of making housing more affordable. Yeah.
I've been provided with assurances from the government, including by Minister Gallagher in this chamber earlier, that they will address the issues I've raised regarding the need to preserve grandfathers' CGT and negative gearing concessions in the case of death or divorce.
This is a tax on widows, on divorcees, on victims of family and domestic violence who will lose access to negative gearing that they might otherwise have had.
When did the Prime Minister first become aware that Labor's tax legislation would impose what has become known as the widow's tax?
We will address it. If you want to use a different word, David, we will fix it and we'll make clear the way that we will fix it in the legislation that follows. Again, that's not unusual when it comes to tax reform for it to be undertaken in that way.
Also in this debate recently, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has promised to deal with the consequence of the tax changes that the Coalition has called a widow's tax because, of course, they did. Chalmers has said that he's going to deal with it in a second bill later this year. But Matt, what is this it's very scary sounding widows tax that the coalition's worried about.
Yeah, so this is all to do with grandfathering. So grandfathering is where people who got in before the changes get to keep the old, more generous scheme.
Yeah.
In particular, we're talking about negative gearing. So if you bought before the budget speech started, so literally, if you bought before 7:30 on that Tuesday evening, you are completely grandfathered with your negative gearing. If you bought at 7:31,
Unlucky.
You are not.
Yeah.
Right? And so what this is, well, if you are grandfathered, but your circumstances change and you sell the property, right, then obviously you lose that grandfathering.
Yeah.
But there's a particular situation where if your partner dies or if you get divorced, then you might buy your partner out, or, you know, in the case if they're dying, you inherit that.
Yeah.
50%. That's a change in circumstances. If you buy your partner out, you buy half the property off them, that's a change in circumstances and you lose that negative gearing.
Yeah.
Right? So you did have it before, but going forwards, you won't have it. Now, let's be clear. Negative gearing exists because people might not be able to change investment decisions quickly. So the rules have changed. You bought the property under one set of rules and suddenly they change and you can't really sell the house quickly because it's a big rigmarole. And so therefore you're disadvantaged. Well, if your partner died or you got divorced, that's a change in circumstances. So that's why effectively originally they were thinking about, well, you know, that counts as a change in circumstances. The government has said that they're not going to continue with this.
Yeah.
But look, I think what it highlights is the fact that grandfathering is almost seen like winning the lottery, right? Like you kind of got in soon enough, and so therefore you're better off than other people who didn't. Really, the playing field should be even. Everybody should face the same rules, and grandfathering stops that. And so really, another way of doing it would be to say, well, sure, you're negatively geared, but you're negatively geared for, say, 3 years. And what that allows people to do is to go, you know what? If I had known that there was no negative gearing, I would not have bought this property. And so therefore they have 3 years grace to sell the property up if they want to and move on and invest their money somewhere else.
Yeah.
The reality is, because house prices have increased so rapidly, they're going to make a capital gain. This is still going to probably be a good investment for them. But they get to get out and go and invest elsewhere. But if they then decide, well, you know what, this is still a good investment, even without negative gearing, I like it, well, then they go on to, after 3 years, they go on to the new scheme and they're treated like everybody else. So I really think that something like grandfathering should be time limited. Absolutely. Look, if the government thinks that this is important, that, you know, when people get divorced or, you know, their partner died, you know, they're tragic circumstances. I can absolutely understand why the government is concerned about this. Then they should include those. But you really need to time limit it. And when Greg and I went before the Senate and gave evidence on this, the one change we suggested the government make on these changes to negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount was limiting this negative gearing.
But when people are negatively geared, they're still only really going to be negatively geared for a limited time anyway.
Yeah. So they say they've got negative gearing for all time.
Yeah.
But the biggest expense, the biggest reason that people are negative geared is they have huge investment mortgages and they pay lots of interest. And the payment of that interest, the cost of that interest gets deducted from their rent. And that's why they're losing money.
Yeah.
Because the mortgages are so huge, because the house prices are so high. But as you pay a mortgage down, the amount of interest you pay on that mortgage goes down too. And so most houses are negatively geared when they first are sold, but then they slowly become positively geared over time. So in about 7 years' time, even houses, 7 to 10 years, even houses that were bought right before the budget will probably be positively geared. And so this is limited to sort of 7 to 10 years, probably in most cases. We just think grandfathering is about making a decision that, you know, we don't want to disadvantage people who've made a decision and not give them a chance to get out. 3 years is more than enough time to work out your circumstances and go, do I want to be in this or not? And so really grandfathering of something like negative gearing should just be time limited.
Well, then I guess maybe it's in a way good that the coalition has prodded the government about this, you know, save all those widows and
Yeah, I
says-
think it was actually Pocock, Senator Pocock.
Oh, really?
Who actually
I'm sorry to not give him the credit.
raised
I'm
that
so
issue.
sorry.
Look, the coalition absolutely jumped on board the moment it happened.
Yep.
But he was the one that pointed it out. Look, it's a small change. It's not going to affect very many people at all. Like, we're talking about a very small minority. So look, if the government want to make changes, to that, that's fine.
Yeah, I suppose while it is good that they are fixing this particular issue, it is telling that, following these changes, we've spoken about all these sort of edge cases of people who are negatively affected, was it the rent festers and things like that. But overall, the benefits to Australia as a whole of more affordable house prices following these changes is a very good thing.
Oh, absolutely. This is the best legislation that the Albanese government has come up with. These are huge tax reforms along with the changes to trusts. These are big fundamental tax reform, probably the biggest we've had since the carbon price, which then got tracked, and before that, the GST. These are going to make housing more affordable. This has been the biggest issue facing Australia for a long time. And if you look at any polling, people are overwhelmingly in favour of housing becoming more affordable.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of mud thrown around over the last few weeks since the budget that have confused people and made people worry that perhaps young people, for example, won't be better off, which is just madness. Of course they're going to be better off. But overall, these are excellent reforms that will actually make a difference to housing affordability. We've had 20 years of hearing about housing affordability policies that are at best will do nothing and at worst are utter trash and will actually make housing less affordable.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I am optimistic that we're going to actually solve this problem.
Yeah. Well, I reckon that's probably all we've got time for today, Matt. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Elinor.
This episode was recorded on Thursday, the 2nd of July, and things may have changed since recording. Maybe that houses will be more affordable. Who knows? If you want to learn more, Matt has written so much about housing on our website or at The Point, which is at thepoint.com.au. Head on over there. Matt has written quite a lot about housing over the years. And if you want to leave us a review or rate us 5 stars, that would be much appreciated. Music, as always, is from Blue Dot Sessions. Have a great week, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.